Elizabeth I was England's greatest queen. She was strong-willed, passionate, and brave.
Prepare the country for invasion.
But beneath the image of a magnificent ruler was a vulnerable woman surrounded by danger.
She had enemies everywhere, scheming for her crown and plotting against her life.
She would never know a moment's peace.
There are reports of a new plot to take your throne.
From the minute Elizabeth was born, she was thrust into a bloody game in which the stakes were life and death.
She never knew who to trust and who to fear. Her whole reign was a battle for survival.
No!
We'll see England's greatest queen as she's never been seen before.
Know your place, man! Battling threats at every turn, from her father, her nobles, and her sister.
She acts like your enemy and is to be feared.
Bring her here immediately.
We'll also reveal what drove her enemies, the plots they hatched, the risks they took.
And show just how close they got to destroying the woman who became Elizabeth.
Elizabeth is now in her 50s and facing the greatest challenge of her reign, the Spanish Armada.
We are like a lamb to the slaughter. We must act while we have the chance. She will pay for this.
I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and the stomach of a king.
And as the years passed, Elizabeth was transformed from a warrior queen into a vulnerable old woman.
You threaten me in my own court.
At the mercy of a man she had once loved.
Her conditions are as crooked as her carcass.
The final battle of Elizabeth's reign was beginning, and everything was at stake.
How dare he? I will not run.
In 1585, Elizabeth was 52 years old. She had been Queen of England for more than 25 years. So far, she had survived countless threats to her life and freedom.
From her father, Henry VIII, her sister, Mary,
I cannot bear to look at you.
the Pope,
All known Catholics should be brought in for questioning.
and her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots.
She has abused me.
I will not trust her.
Against all the odds, Elizabeth had survived.
But she now faced an enemy deadlier than all the others put together. King Philip II of Spain.
Philip was rich, powerful, and a devout Catholic at a time when Europe was being ripped apart by a bloody religious war. Throughout his reign, he'd funded several plots against the Protestant Elizabeth, but all of them had been unsuccessful. But in 1585, the Pope asked Philip to invade England, imprison Elizabeth, and haul the country back to the Catholic Church.
King Philip had no stomach for wars. They were expensive and risky, but he couldn't say no to the Pope's demands.
There is no better time to strike.
How big an operation do you think we will need?
400, 500 ships, capable of carrying 55,000 men. We will also need supply vessels to carry horses, provisions, cannon. His Holy Father has offered 1 million ducats for the enterprise.
Take a message to the Pope. I accept his invitation to conquer England.
Philip began building the most powerful military fleet in the world. It became known as the Spanish Armada. So how did Philip plan to invade? At the Queen's house in Greenwich, there are charts drawn up in 1590.
So here's Philip's master plan. He was going to use his 130 warships, that's what we call the Armada, to engage the English fleet. Now, while that was happening, another 300 smaller boats would ferry 26,000 Spanish troops from here in the Netherlands to here on the south coast of England. Once that was done, the warships would drop off another 18,000 men, and together that massive army would march through Kent to London, seize the capital, and capture Elizabeth.
Well, that was the plan, anyway. Philip worked hard to keep his massive invasion fleet secret, but Elizabeth had spies everywhere.
In February 1587, intelligence reports reached Elizabeth's chief spy, Sir Francis Walsingham, and advisor William Cecil. They needed to make Queen Elizabeth see the terrible danger she was now in.
Madam.
Your Majesty.
What's wrong? You both look like you've seen a ghost.
Madam, we...
Spit it out.
Every dry dock in Spain is working day and night building ships. 300 have been counted so far. Vast quantities of supplies are being mobilized. And over 70,000 men have been recruited from across Italy, Spain, and Portugal.
King Philip means to invade.
Elizabeth must have been terrified. England was no match for the mighty Spanish Empire. She had a much smaller navy and no national army on standby. Elizabeth must have known that if Philip managed to land, England would be easily overrun and she would be killed.
We are like a lamb to the slaughter. We must act while we have the chance.
That would be an act of war.
Should we sit and wait for them to strike first? Our inaction will be seen as weakness.
My lord, I think you forget yourself. There is no hope of peace.
Your Majesty, it appears he has the support of the Pope.
I see.
The longer we wait, the more dangerous the situation becomes.
How must we proceed?
Sir Francis Drake has offered to lead a squadron of warships to harass the Spanish war effort. He could buy us precious time.
This was a very real dilemma for Elizabeth. If she allowed Drake to attack Philip's fleet, she risked starting a war. But if she did nothing, she risked losing her kingdom and her head. On the 15th of March 1587, Elizabeth gave Francis Drake permission to attack Philip's fleet. England was now at war with the most powerful empire on earth. If the plan failed, the country would be brought to its knees, and Elizabeth would not survive. In 1587, Queen Elizabeth gave permission for Francis Drake to attack King Philip of Spain's vast invasion fleet. On the 20th of April, 1587, Drake's squadron of 23 ships sailed into the Spanish port of Cadiz, the main supply base for Philip's invasion fleet, and there started to wreak utter devastation. Drake and his men sunk or burnt 30 ships and plundered thousands of tons of supplies.
News of Drake's daring attack soon reached Philip.
How did this happen?
The English sailed into port under Dutch flags. Our men had no warning.
How dare she? She will pay for this!
Philip now had no choice but to delay the invasion until his fleet could be repaired. Elizabeth's gamble had paid off. She had bought the country valuable time to build its defences.
We have doubled your guard, and security will be with you day and night. I'd strongly advise removing yourself from public view. For the while, at least. Your Majesty, we need to prepare for war.
England was now on high alert, but there was a problem. Elizabeth didn't have enough money to defend the country against the mighty Spanish Empire.
Our coastline has been surveyed. We're dangerously exposed.
We have neither the money nor the men to protect all of the beaches. Only the most dangerous can be defended.
Set Drake to work, build up the navy, and prepare the country for invasion.
Elizabeth and her commanders assembled around 34 warships, but they were desperately short of trained men, ammunition, and gunpowder. They would be no match for Philip's invasion fleet.
In Spain, Philip's massive invasion fleet had finally been rebuilt and was ready to go. On July the 12th, 1588, 130 ships carrying 17,000 soldiers set sail from the port of Lisbon. A week later, they were spotted off the coast of Cornwall.
On the 29th of July, the English fleet sailed out of Plymouth to face Philip's armada.
Now, when the Spanish ships did engage the English with the famous Francis Drake, they should have won easily. After all, they had far greater numbers. But the English ships were smaller, lighter, and easier to maneuver than the heavy Spanish troop carriers.
For the next 12 days, the English and Spanish fleets pounded each other. Against all the odds, the English fleet got the upper hand. The Armada was defeated.
All in all, the Spanish lost 15,000 men and 60 of their 130 warships. The English didn't lose a single ship to the enemy.
On the 18th of August, unaware that the Armada was being blown north, Elizabeth went to rally her troops. She travelled to Tilbury in Essex, where many of her soldiers were stationed, and it was there that she delivered one of the greatest speeches of all time.
I have the body of a weak and feeble woman. But I have the heart and the stomach of a king, and I think foul scorn that Spain or any prince of Europe should dare invade the borders of my realm. I myself will take up arms. I myself will be your general, your judge, and your rewarder of every one of your virtues in the field.
Elizabeth had beaten the most powerful empire in the world. The defeat of the Armada was Elizabeth's finest hour. She had never been so loved nor so popular. Elizabeth and her subjects saw the victory as a sign that God was on their side. They were the chosen people, and Elizabeth and the Protestant cause clearly had God's backing. Elizabeth had seen off the deadly threat from Catholic Spain, but there was one enemy she could never defeat: time. All her life, Elizabeth tried to look majestic, royal, and above all, youthful. She used white lead makeup on her skin to make it pale and attractive. She put vermilion, made of toxic mercury, on her cheeks to make them red. She even used belladonna, deadly nightshade, in her eyes to make them sparkle. By her 50s, though her outfits grew more elaborate than ever, beneath them, she was falling to bits. Elizabeth's court was also decaying. Her trusted advisors were either dead or dying. William Cecil was in his 60s, riddled with gout and desperate to retire.
Your Majesty.
What have we to do today?
Elizabeth now had to rely on a new generation of advisors. They would cause her no end of problems. With William Cecil on his sickbed, his son Robert became Elizabeth's private secretary.
And this is the new taxation bill.
Elizabeth also appointed her favourite, Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex, as her privy councillor.
My most gracious and beautiful sovereign.
My Lord Essex. How lovely to see you.
Essex was charming, flirtatious, and seriously ambitious. Elizabeth adored him.
That as a man, I've been more subject to your natural beauty than as a subject to the power of a king.
Essex and Cecil were great rivals in court. The two men hated each other.
And my dear Cecil, I didn't see you skulking there.
My lord.
What are you doing at this hour? Working. Come. Drink. Dance. Play.
My lord, I really must insist we have important work to complete.
Cecil is right.
Nonsense. The day is for work. The night is for fun. Elizabeth, send him away.
Cecil, let us finish this in the morning.
Your Majesty, we really need
It can wait.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Essex was notoriously spoilt, but he made Elizabeth feel young again.
Come, dance.
We have no music.
Dance with me.
Elizabeth may have been the Virgin Queen, but she had always had a weakness for handsome young men.
Elizabeth's attention made Essex the top dog at court, but that was about to become a very big problem, because Essex's raging ambition would bring Elizabeth and the whole country to their knees.
In July 1598, a Catholic rebellion sprung up in Ireland. Elizabeth needed someone to stamp out the uprising, and quick.
Who do we have who has experience?
Elizabeth's young advisors, Essex and Robert Cecil, had very different ideas about who should be sent.
Sir William Knollys would be perfect for the role.
Your Majesty, it may suit Cecil and his supporters to have my uncle stranded in Ireland, but it does not suit me.
Essex believed Cecil was trying to undermine him by sending his uncle and most important ally to Ireland.
My lord, you are mistaken. I chose Sir William for his diplomatic skills, no ulterior motive.
Liar! You just wish to weaken my position in court, and I will not stand for it!
Enough! I will have no more outbursts. Cecil is right. Send Sir William to Ireland.
Majesty, I do protest.
You can protest all you like. I've made my decision. How dare you turn your back on me? You will not dismiss yourself in my presence! You threaten me in my own court.
I cannot and will not put up with so great an insult. I would not have taken it from your father, and I will not take it from you.
Get back! Get back here!
Her conditions are as crooked as her carcass.
Essex's words must have stung Elizabeth. She had believed he loved and cared for her. But it was all lies. She had been made to look like an old fool.
Essex had shown himself a threat to Elizabeth's authority. But before long, he would do more than threaten her. He would try to seize her power in a bloody coup.
We fight to the death! Are you with me? Are you with me?
In July 1598, Elizabeth's favourite, Lord Essex, turned on his queen.
I cannot and will not put up with so great an insult. I would not have taken it from your father, and I will not take it from you.
Essex scuttled off to his estates in Wanstead, and believing he had done no wrong, he waited for an apology from Elizabeth. But it didn't come.
The standoff might have continued, but in August 1598, the Queen received two terrible pieces of news. The first was that William Cecil, her trusted advisor and dear friend, had died. The second was a report that the rebellion in Ireland had escalated, and the rebel leader, Hugh O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, had ambushed a garrison of English troops, killing over 2,000 men. Elizabeth needed a military leader to attack Tyrone in his stronghold in Ulster and crush the rebellion. One man was desperate for the job.
Essex. Still sulking?
Your Majesty, I've come to offer you my services.
I have no need of what you offer. I warned you, time and time again. If you continue to misbehave, my patience would turn to fury.
Your Majesty, allow me to prove my loyalty. Send me to Ireland.
And you are qualified.
I have the trust and respect of your soldiers. I've commanded your forces before and won great triumph.
Essex saw this as his chance to get back into Elizabeth's good books.
My queen, I promise, send me, and I will defeat your enemies and bring you the head of the traitor Tyrone.
Very well. Go to Ireland and bring that rude and barbarous nation to heel.
Majesty.
And Essex, do not make me regret my decision.
On March the 27th, 1599, Essex left London with 22,000 men. But from the moment he and his troops landed in Dublin, the campaign was a disaster. The Irish rebels fought a fierce guerrilla war. In just 2 months, Essex had lost 11,000 men. Those who survived were so demoralised they refused to attack Ulster, Tyrone's stronghold.
This army is nothing more than a ragbag of raw recruits with no fighting experience. Where are the weapons and horses I was promised? These rebels are able-bodied and skilled with their weapons. They take any advantage they are offered and fight in the woods and bogs where our horses are useless. If Her Majesty does not grant me the means to do my job, I hope she does not expect a great result.
Essex wrote to Elizabeth demanding she send money and reinforcements.
We are badly served. He has no reason to whine. He has everything he asked for. More, even, than was agreed upon before he went. I expect him to attack Tyrone immediately.
In August, Essex marched on Ulster, which was Tyrone's stronghold. But he didn't attack. Instead, on September the 7th, expressly ignoring Elizabeth's instructions, he secretly met the Irish rebel leader to negotiate a peace deal. It was a seriously bad move.
News of the secret meeting soon made it back to Elizabeth.
What is this?
Majesty, I apologize for the intrusion. I have a report from Ireland I think you should read.
Is this true?
Lord Essex and the rebel leader talked alone for half an hour or more. He has agreed a truce.
He has betrayed me.
Elizabeth was horrified by Essex's disloyalty.
This is an act of treason. Take a message immediately. To trust the traitor Tyrone on oath is to trust a devil on his religion. Whatever arrangement he has made with him, unless he yields to having English forces planted in Ireland, then this is a hollow peace.
When Essex heard how angry Elizabeth was, he knew he was in serious trouble. As impulsive as ever, he deserted his command in Ireland and rode through the night to London. He thought he could sweet-talk Elizabeth and she would forgive him.
Your Majesty, please forgive the intrusion.
Lord Essex, what is the meaning of this?
I needed to see you. I needed to explain my actions.
Get up. Get up, man. I'm in no state to receive you. What do you think you're doing?
Essex's sudden intrusion must have been utterly humiliating for Elizabeth. Throughout her reign, she had wanted to appear as if time had left her unscathed. And here she was, caught without her wig and without her makeup. Her smallpox scars, her age spots, and her wrinkles were all clearly on show.
We'll talk later. Let me dress.
Your Majesty.
Go now.
Elizabeth kept calm, and at first she seemed forgiving towards Essex. But her mood quickly darkened. Later that same day, Elizabeth summoned Lord Essex to court to explain himself.
Why did you desert your post in Ireland?
My most dear sovereign, members of your council are poisoning your ear to me.
Do you deny that you disobeyed my orders? You left London so confident that all would be well. But now we are in a greater mess than ever before.
Majesty.
Silence! You did not attack Ulster. You frittered away money and time, and then dared make peace with that traitor Tyrone against my express orders. And then you had the audacity to burst into my bedchamber.
I humbly beseech your majesty, I am the saddest soul on earth.
Begone. I need time to consider my response.
On the 5th of June, Elizabeth stripped the Earl of Essex of his title. She banished him from court, and she placed him under house arrest.
Essex was utterly humiliated, but there was worse to come. His entire fortune was based on a lucrative royal licence to import sweet wines to England. In October 1600, Elizabeth scrapped that licence. This one act condemned Essex to financial ruin, and his social standing was in the gutter.
Essex flew into a violent rage. He refused to accept his punishment and was determined to strike back. The Queen's former favourite had become her enemy.
The hot-headed Essex came up with a daring plan. He and his supporters would storm the Palace of Westminster, overthrow the Privy Council, and force Elizabeth to reinstate his title and his source of income. Essex and his men set out here, along Cheapside, to confront the Queen at Whitehall Palace. He knew he didn't have enough men to storm the palace, but he planned to recruit disgruntled Londoners as he marched.
This was the first time in her 42 years as Queen that Elizabeth had been in personal danger in her own capital city.
Madam, we have no time. We need to get you to safety. He plans to attack the palace. We must act quickly before we are overrun.
How dare he! I will not run. Barricade Charing Cross. This treacherous rebel will not pass, and I will not sleep until he is taken. Cecil, I want Essex proclaimed a traitor in every street of the city. And anyone who joins him in his uprising will also join him at the gallows.
In the city, Essex and his men shouted slogans, hoping to draw others to their cause. But Londoners refused to join the rebellion.
Imagine how Essex must have felt. He was so confident the people of England were behind him, he was prepared to ride through the streets of London, calling on them to rise up against their Queen. He was completely deluded. Elizabeth was the hero, not him. She'd defeated the great Spanish enemy, and God was on her side. Essex had got this badly wrong. Terrified, he ran for his life.
Essex and his supporters made it back to his house on the Strand, but Elizabeth's troops soon had him surrounded.
Your Majesty, we have Essex and his rebels cornered. He won't escape.
Contemptuous fool.
He refuses to surrender. What would you have us do?
I'm tired. This must stop now. Take 2 cannon from the tower and reduce his house to rubble.
Yes, Your Grace.
Cecil, tell me when it's done.
Cannons! Cannons!
When Essex saw the cannon being wheeled into position, he knew the game was up. He had no choice but to surrender. On the morning of February the 25th, 1601, Essex was taken to the Tower of London. He'd been tried, found guilty of high treason, and sentenced to death.
My sins are greater in number than the hairs on my head. I have bestowed my youth in pride, vanity, lust, and other sins. I crave pardon from the Almighty, especially for my last sin, whereby out of love for me so many ventured to offend their sovereign. Strike home, executioner! Strike home!
Strangely, of all the enemies that came after Elizabeth in her long reign, the battles she fought to survive, no one got closer to her than the arrogant, reckless Essex. But just like all the others, the plotters, the schemers, the invaders, he had failed. Maybe, just maybe, God really was on her side. Elizabeth may have survived, but time had caught up with England's great queen, and the end was in sight. In March 1603, when Queen Elizabeth was 69 years old, she fell seriously ill. She was suffering from ulcers in her throat and fevers.
For 11 days, she sat on her bedroom floor, refusing to get into bed.
Your Majesty. How are you feeling?
I know nothing in the world worthy to trouble me.
Your Majesty, the doctors all say the same. You need to eat.
I know my health better than they. I am not in as much danger as they think.
Elizabeth thought that if she got into bed, she would never get up again. Her fighting spirit was still very much alive.
Then rest at least, please, Your Majesty. Let me help you to your bed.
I will not.
Your Majesty, I must insist.
Little man must is not a word to use to princes. Your father, had he still been alive, would not have used such a word.
On the 22nd of March, Elizabeth was finally persuaded to rest. It was clear that the end was near.
On her deathbed, Elizabeth was asked to name her heir.
The naming of a successor is like the tolling of my own death bell. I will have no rascal succeed me. Who should succeed me but a king?
According to Robert Cecil, Elizabeth chose King James VI of Scotland, the son of her great rival, Mary Queen of Scots.
At around 3 a.m. on the 24th of March 1603, Queen Elizabeth died. She was 69 years old. A month later, on April the 28th, thousands of people turned out to see the funeral procession of the late Queen Elizabeth. Her coffin, covered with purple velvet and carried on a chariot drawn by 4 great horses, was brought here to Westminster Abbey. The streets were lined with mourners, all eager to pay their respect to the woman who, once young and vulnerable, had, over the more than 44 years of her reign, become England's greatest queen. Even in death, Elizabeth cannot escape her enemies. She shares her tomb with one of her greatest opponents, her half-sister, Mary I. It was hoped that the two sisters would finally make peace in the afterlife. Elizabeth was a truly magnificent queen, and her greatest skill was survival. Family members, lovers, popes and kings all tried to crush her. All of them failed.
She will pay for this.
I myself will be your general, your judge.
Just like Elizabeth, England had survived. Coups, plots and armadas had come and gone. None of them had managed to break her people.
That's why we look back to her reign as a golden age, the birth of a truly great nation.